Knowles on the News. Susan Knowles.
So where do you stand now that the first presidential debate is over between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? Did you think that there was a clear-cut winner? Did you think it was a tie? Where do you stand? You know, I tell you, it was something that was highly anticipated. I know that you were probably feeling the same way. And record numbers of people tuned in to watch the debate. It had all the earmarkings of being a three-ring circus. It really did. We were going to have Mark Cuban there that was invited by the Clinton campaign, essentially to intimidate Donald Trump. Yeah, it always happens. One billionaire intimidating another billionaire. Never going to happen. And it didn't happen. I'm not even sure Donald Trump even knew or cared that Mark Cuban may have been there. And then, of course, there was talk that Jennifer Flowers, Paula Jones, and Juanita Broderick were going to be there. So it had the earmarkings, like I said, of being a three-ring circus or some, fight at ringside where everybody was having front row seats. I'm so glad it didn't turn into that, because the American public deserve and really did get a lot better than that type of behavior. I think, right now the issues have to really focus on America, what's best for America, and how each of these candidates is going to help America get back on track, if that's possible at this point. And everybody seems to think that it's going to take a lot of work, but that it is possible. And so what did we see? Well, in the very beginning, Hillary comes out in her all-red pantsuit. Did you really expect her to wear anything else other than a pantsuit? And really, I don't know, anything else other than red? I knew there would be red somewhere. That's the power color. So she had to have that. I'm surprised she didn't have a little red headband on or a red earbug or something like that. But apparently she spared us on that one, thank God. But she looked like the communist that she is. And what does she do? And she comes out, and that's basically the first thing that she does is she spreads communism and socialism when she's talking. She doesn't know anything else. And I'm sure that was just to appease and try to win over those Bernie supporters who by now have probably, who knows, committed suicide because they're so distraught over the fact that Bernie Sanders won't be their next president. And then we had Donald Trump, who came out wearing his, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a pale blue tie, but it was a lighter colored blue tie that he wore, which shows that he's diplomatic, but he doesn't have to show that he's all that powerful by wearing red, because he just is who he is. And, watching Hillary walk across the stage, I have to say, it seemed like it took effort for her to do that. She was a little, in my opinion, a little toddly, just a little bit. And was sort of deliberate in the steps that she took, kind of slow and deliberate. And it was the same way that she spoke. And at times she would look over at Donald Trump, and it looked almost like she was going to fall asleep. I don't know if she was or had so much, the eyelashes on and the eye makeup that her eyes were heavy. I have no idea. But she did really well in that there was no coughing. She didn't collapse during the hour and a half. She didn't have to sit down. She stood up the whole time. She was aware and very much in the game of the whole debate. And, doing her usual Hillary act of smirking whenever somebody said something, or smiling from ear to ear when she just looks at the camera like, I've just heard the most ridiculous thing in my life. And that was mostly every time Donald Trump talked, that's the look she had on her face. Now, Donald Trump, on the other hand, in critiquing him, I thought he did a lot better. He showed some restraint. He held back, but he didn't allow Hillary to get away with telling lies. He would interrupt and say, that's not true. No, that's false. Whatever the case may be. But I felt there were some things that he needed improvement on. For one, don't ever call her Secretary Hillary Clinton again. She's former Secretary Hillary Clinton, if anything, But the two of you are on equal footing now. This is an equal race. So you should be Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And it seemed like when Donald Trump sort of got upset with her later on in the debate, he did start calling her Hillary, but he called her secretary way too many times. She's no longer the Secretary of State, and she's really pretty much embarrassed and humiliated that title. So let's not even bring that up unless you want to show what she did that was inappropriate as Secretary of State. Emails, Benghazi, Clinton Foundation. All things, by the way, that Donald Trump really did not harp on. He had an opportunity to talk about those things, and he didn't do it. Why? I don't know. It seemed like in the beginning that he wanted to take it easy on her. And I know pretty much, I think the women out there that he was afraid of offending, and that's exactly what it was. He didn't want to get tough on her too quickly because the feminists and the left-wing women of voters that are going to vote for Hillary no matter what happens, he didn't want to offend those people. I'm sitting here as a conservative going, you need to be tougher on her, Donald. You really need to stop looking at her as a female. At this point, it's between these two candidates should be looking at each other as president material. Who's going to be the best president? That when you're talking about the president of the United States, there shouldn't be color of skin, gender, height, or anything else that comes into play, and that you look at the other person and go, oh, well, I've got to treat them differently, or I've got to do this because of X, Y, and Z. No. Both of you are in a competition for the presidency of the United States, and you need to act like that. So she doesn't need to look at him as, well, he's a guy, and he doesn't need to look at her as, oh, well, she's a woman, and whatever that conjures up into their brains at that point. They just need to look at each other as equals and as two people vying for the same position, and you talk to them as you would anybody else who's running for the office. So get out there next time, Donald. What I'm saying here is get out there next time and talk to her as you would anyone else. And for God's sakes, bring up all of the history that this woman has. There's so much that he could bring up. She certainly brought up anything and everything that she could about Donald Trump, including their fathers, which I was like, whoa. And you knew she was going to go to the point, well, Donald Trump was given money, and I was from a middle-class family. You know what? She may have been from a middle-class family, but she hasn't been middle-class for most of her life. All they do is wheel and deal in the Clintons in money of some type of thing or another. Go take a gander at the Clinton Foundation and see what's going on there. Look at the amount of money they get for every time that they do a speech. And then let's talk about the connection of the Clinton Foundation with when she was Secretary of State and how people were given perhaps great benefit for being amongst the two or for donating to the Clinton Foundation. They received a benefit. All of that stuff needs to still come out, and we're not really focusing on it because all we're doing now is helping this woman, and I don't mean us as conservatives, but those in the media and those on the left are trying to help this woman across the finish line any way they possibly can, including the FBI. We just found out there's more emails to come out, but they're only going to give us a little percentage before the election because, gosh darn it, they just don't have time to sit down and go through 2,800 emails. They need to go after other people, whomever that might be, anybody that they want to that is not a high-profile person. They're going to leave the high-profile person alone. They're just going to go after the you and me out there, the common man and woman on the street. Because those people, you have to have the FBI coming after them. I mean, we can't go after the terrorists, but obviously we haven't been going after the terrorists but in the FBI because these people are still doing what they want to do, which is terrorizing people in the United States. You can't tell me that they didn't know about some of these people that, like their dad calls in and says, hey, I just want to let you know my son's a terrorist. Okay, well, thanks for calling. Oh, but we don't have time. We've got somebody threw gum on the sidewalk, and we're going to go after them until we get every bit of information, and we put them behind bars for good. Those are the people they're going after. They're so bought and sold by this administration, and everybody just seems to go, oh gosh, it's just the FBI. They're busy, and let's call the DOJ every time we need to, and anytime. These, like the Black Caucus. We want to get the DOJ out here so that they can just do away with the police force and well, not really do away with them, but let's just federalize them. I mean, come on, that's what's happening. This is what the Obama administration has wanted forever. And it seems like forever. It's been 8 years, but it seems like forever. My gosh, it seems like forever. And so here we have people trying to federalize the police, put them under the DOJ so we can know absolutely everything that they do. Because, of course, we all know all police officers are bad, right? Come on. It really irks me that people still continue to believe that lie. And it's not everybody, but it makes it appear that way because BLM, who is funded by George Soros and other left-wing progressive types and organizations, bus in whomever they have to cause riots in Charlotte or anywhere else that it's needed. And we just, that's the knee-jerk reaction. And so we do that, and then what happens? Well, all chaos breaks out, and that's exactly what we want to have happen if you're in the Obama administration. Chaos, chaos, chaos. But getting back to my point, we're not going to get all of Hillary's emails. I'm sure there's emails that we don't even know about and may never know about for years that woman has. But it's not going to come out because they want her to be president. And it doesn't matter if she's sick, if she's healthy, if she's a criminal. They just want her in the White House. Because why? She earned it. She earned it. And there had to be a lot of people that had to fall out of the wayside and fall out of the wake of Hillary in order to get there. And there's been 46 people that have just kind of mysteriously, and unfortunately, these people have over the past 3 decades just died. It's horrible, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence in all of these, but it's just amazing, and still. We're never going to look at that. We're never going to even talk about that. Trump's not going to talk about that. He's not going to bring that up. They're not going to talk about the top officials who just, barbell on the throat, and he's gone. An author that had written about her forever about how corrupt she is. Well, gosh, he committed suicide. And then the ties to the DNC, the 3, I believe, individuals, they were all murdered in various ways. And that's just recently. All of that is just recent. If you go back over 3 decades, oh my gosh. And if you were to go beyond the 3 decades, how many more bodies would have been in the way? Were they really in the way, or was it just a coincidence? I'm leaning towards it. I'm sure it was just a coincidence. But Trump's going to have to get tougher. He is going to have to bring up every piece of dirty laundry that she has. And that may take a long time, but he's going to have to do it. And I know some people mentioned that it looked like that she was reading off of notes. Now, I don't know if she was reading off of notes that she'd prepared before she got there, or if she had just started. I saw her immediately start making notations on I guess they give him a pen and paper, and she was making notes right away when he starts talking. I didn't see him do that one time, and I think that's a mistake. I think he needs to, he needs to come out against her as if that is the greatest fight that he has of his lifetime, because it is. It really and truly is. And I don't know if he took these debates as seriously as he could have or should have. This woman is an experienced, and I mean experienced, speaker. It may be crap coming out of her mouth when she's talking, but she is experienced. And she knows the power of the word. And I'm not talking about the Bible here, folks. Don't want to disappoint you, but I'm not talking about the Bible. She knows the words to say, and you can hear her calculating as she's speaking in a very deliberate kind of looking and choosing her words wisely as she's delivering her speech. She is an attorney, has been an attorney, and always will be, and she knows how to pick the words that will get her where she wants to go, that will complete the goal that she wants, that will make the point that she wants. And it's very hard on somebody like that who's very cold and calculating and deliberate. It's very hard to fight that. And if you're not careful, you end up on the defense. And that's what Donald Trump did in the second half and on all that, especially the second hour. And I think it was even sooner than that. He was more on the defense than he was just coming after her. Although he did still continue to come after her, it just wasn't enough. It was too light, in my opinion. And the other thing that was very distracting was what sounded like he was sniffing. He says that's just the way he talks, and it's always been that way. I've never, ever heard that. I mean, here we were talking about how sick Hillary is, and he comes out and he sounds like he's the one with the cold or the allergies. And then a couple of times the camera would pan over and he's drinking water. Now, what that shows me is that he's nervous. He has dry mouth and he's nervous. I don't know if, he's a speaker too, and he's been up on crowds of people, and I get all that. But when you start doing that, that shows that you have nerves. I think he got settled down as the night went on. But she didn't once take a sip of water. Not once. And I just kept thinking, I wonder what kinds of medication or what they did, or if they did anything to prepare her to stand there and not have a coughing attack or any other type of attack. I mean, I can only imagine. But you could tell she was well versed and well rehearsed for the debates. And she took, about a week off from fundraising. And she was preparing. Every day they drilled her for hours. And I would imagine that she had to stand for long hours every day, probably more than 2 hours, so that she would be prepared for the debate, so that she wouldn't collapse, that she would build up stamina. And I'm sure they pumped every vitamin into her that they could possibly find, and anything else legally they could do to prep her for this debate. I mean, it seems like it. Now, I guess we're all still supposed to believe that she just had pneumonia and she's fine now. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know how they're going to explain her eyes, and I didn't see any of it last night. So however they managed that, they seem to manage that. But I think that for the next debate, Donald Trump is going to need to be, and it's not so much rehearsed, but he needs to know every question that could be thrown at him, and every question that Hillary Clinton could say, could bring up to him. Not necessarily a question, but every jab that she could make towards him, everything that she could dig up from his history that she could possibly talk about. Why didn't he talk about her Sanger Award and who Margaret Sanger is? Why didn't he bring things up like that? I mean, there's so much that you can bring up on her, and the fact that she was against gay marriage, and then all of a sudden when it benefited her, she was for gay marriage. I mean, this woman she flip-flops as much as Obama does. And he spent a lot of time saying Obama this, Obama that. What he needed to say was more of, and he did touch on it a little, but what he needed to say more of was, when you were Secretary of State and you were part of the Obama administration, this is what you were responsible for. This is what you did as part of that administration, or this is what the administration did of which you were a part. something like that to drive it home. Because while a lot of people who were watching, are very intelligent, they follow the news, they understand what is going on in politics for the most part, there were probably a number of people who don't watch the news, who don't watch politics, had no idea who these people were, and needed things spoon-fed to them. Let's just put it simply. They needed things spoon-fed to them so that they would understand what is going on. And I think if you watch that, you could come away saying, he was a little tough on her, which I don't believe. Or you could say, well, she really seemed to understand and be very knowledgeable, which, because she was so well rehearsed, it looked like she did know a lot. And if you don't know anything about Hillary, you would be convinced, wow, this is a smart woman. I think she's smart in that she is book smart, but she's smart in that she has so much power behind her and corruption. I mean, let's just call it like it is. So she very much knows how to manipulate people. Now, will she fool everyone? Was she fooling the people for the most part who were watching? Well, her supporters don't care. She could literally do anything and they wouldn't care. She could commit a crime, I guess, in front of them. Wait, she has probably. And they do nothing. They don't care. They're for Hillary. There's nothing you can do. She has the female parts that they're looking for, and that's all that is required for her to be president. Whereas the rest of the country is looking for somebody who actually knows what they can do to fix this country. Now, I heard other people say, it sounded good coming from Trump, but he didn't give a lot of solutions. He didn't really say what he was going to do. I didn't hear Hillary say anything either. I really didn't. And I'm past this point where I know who these two people are. Now I want to hear what you're going to do for me. What are you going to do for the American people? How are you going to make my life better? That's where I'm at. And I think most Americans are there. What are you going to do? What's your tax proposal look like? What is that? Give me the figures. What's it going to look like for me? What's it going to look like for my family? Are you going to get rid of Obamacare? Hillary is not. People are saying Donald Trump won't either. Okay, well, tell me, are you or aren't you? Only your hairstylist knows for sure, as they say. We want to know. Tell us the secrets that you've been holding onto. Share them with us. I think I don't even know. These debates people were saying too. Are they really that valuable? People have already made up their minds. These debates are not going to sway you one way or the other. I mean, they're really not. You think about it. How many Hillary supporters do you think all of a sudden are going to go, wow, she is really crazy. I should go over to Donald Trump and vote for him. It's possible, but at this point, not very likely. Not very likely. Again, they're pretty much sold on who she is and what they feel that she can do. I mean, after all, she came out last night and talking the same socialist stuff. And how many people are on welfare right now? How many people are Bernie supporters? They believe in socialism. They want everything handed to them so they don't have to. And this isn't everybody, by the way, who's on welfare and all that. There are people who absolutely could not survive any other way. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people that have been convinced that this is what you have to do in order to live and have a life, because you can't do it yourself, and God forbid that we show you and help you stand on your own 2 feet. That's not what this administration, that's not what the progressive left wants you to do, and they're not going to help you do that. But those people that are on those programs and have been on those programs for the past 8 years, they just want to keep going on the same program because it benefits them. And Hillary gave them what they wanted to hear. We're just going to keep on keeping on. We're going to take money from corporations. We're going to, rob from the rich and give to the poor. Except for the fact, if you're Clinton, that's never going to happen. But all the other rich people, we're going to take from them and give to the poor. And then, of course, we had to get into race relations because we can't let that subject go. I mean, that's a hot ticket item right now. So we have to say about how much people on the Trump side, how much they're really, and Trump, oh, well, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. And it's absolutely ludicrous for African Americans who might follow Obama when he said, I'll be personally upset if you don't go and vote for Hillary. Yeah. When is the last time you ever heard a black man come out and say, vote for a white woman or I'm going to be personally upset? It typically doesn't happen. I mean, if you're trying to get the black vote and you're a black man, you usually say vote for another black man or another black woman, but it usually isn't outside your own race. I mean, that's the rhetoric that we've heard in the past. So for him to come out and say that, once again, it's ludicrous. I mean, he just tries to use people within the black community to get his agenda across. And unfortunately, a lot of people keep falling for it over and over and over again. And, he stands right there with Black Lives Matter. He really does. And those Black Lives Matter people, all they are doing is using black lives to benefit themselves. And we have Obama inviting them to the White House and, on and on and on. He doesn't care. I had a guest on the other day, Burgess Owens. If you didn't get to hear that, go to Spreaker.com, look up SUSAN KNOWLES, and listen to the Burgess Owens interview that I had. Great guy. He really feels that this whole thing with Obama is a sham and what Obama is trying to do and trying to get the black community to vote for Hillary. I mean, and I think it really is. When you talk to people like Burgess Owens, somebody who gets it, somebody who knows that if these quote unquote activists and those that feel that they can benefit the black community, or at least that's what they tell them they'll do, which they never do. But if those people kind of would get out of the way, along with the government, who the progressive left tries to hold these people back, then we could have African American communities thriving. And as we got into it about the history of African Americans, before segregation, before desegregation, I should say, some of the African American communities were absolutely thriving. And as I was telling him on my show, even in my own hometown, there were doctors and businesses and hospitals, and musical greats would come into their communities and play and perform. It was amazing, and yet we're told none of that. Have you ever, in your history class, ever heard that? I would dare say that you have. I'm sure all that you have heard is how they were unable to function without the government. That if it hadn't been for the government, we wouldn't even have African Americans now. And they never talk about the amount of aborted babies in the black community. That seems to never come up. That, as my guest Burgess Owens pointed out, that never used to happen. African American families were among the strongest families with fathers in the household. And I remember those days. And I remember how much people in the white communities, and I know you Black Lives Matter people won't believe this because you don't want to, but how much the white community respected the African American families and looked upon them as like, wow, this is amazing. And it was something that they lifted up and like I said, really appreciated that. And then I remember a time when I was growing up, I knew that the African American community was very much into church and very much into God and their religion, and people would look at that and go, well, that's amazing and how wonderful that is. And I can remember a time when I would mention that sometimes to, let's say, an African American instructor that I had, and they were absolutely appalled by the fact that people felt that African Americans, somehow in their church lives, somehow that was to be respected. And they felt that was just like ridiculous. that you respected African Americans for their relationship with God and how they were, in church and when I say how they were in church, meaning how devoted they were in church. And I'm imagining a lot of times still are, but when I was growing up, that was just something a lot of people marveled at. And yet a couple of instructors, African American instructors that I spoke with, they were appalled by that. And it's like, wow. And that was years ago, so it didn't really dawn on me. It was at the start of my understanding of progressivism. But how can you be insulted by that? Well, you're insulted by that when your goal is to break up the family. And the best example that I can see that the government, they should really get a gold star for, is breaking up the African American families, because they have done an amazing, amazing job doing that. And that's why, and again, my guest Burgess Owens feels the same way. That's why you see so many issues with single-parent homes and abortion of babies. I think there were more aborted babies in New York, and I think it was 2013, than there were, and that was African American babies, than there were African American babies born. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I just, I cringe when people like Hillary Clinton are so proud of the fact that they have a Margaret Sanger Award. When you have this award that was named after a woman who hated African Americans, whose sole purpose in life, it seemed, was to get rid of them. I mean, she referred to them as basically so inferior. The words, I don't even want to use them. They're disgusting. And here's Hillary. Oh, I'm so proud. I loved Margaret Sanger. She's so wonderful. And this same woman who has grandchildren and a daughter that gave her those grandchildren, and she's for Planned Parenthood, for aborting babies. And if you ask her that, she said, oh, no, of course it's not about the abortion, it's about the birth control. And Margaret Sanger, as you know, was the head of Planned Parenthood. So 2 strikes out there, Hillary, 2 strikes. And, I know the people listening to this program have either made up their mind they're going to vote for Trump or they're not going to vote for Trump. But the people listening to this program aren't trying to decide between Trump and Hillary. It just isn't that way. But I can tell you, and as everybody sitting here listening knows, that if you vote for Hillary and you have her running this country, you can hang it up. You know what's going to happen. The corruption that you've seen, the lies that you've been told are going to continue. They're not going to get better. They will get worse. And if you thought Barack Obama was bad, she will be your worst nightmare. And I don't even, I have no idea if this woman is sick, the healthiest person in the world. I really don't know, because I'm not privy to that information from her doctors. And we're not going to hear the truth. Again, we're never going to know the truth about this woman unless she keels over someday. And then who knows if they'll tell us that she passed away. I have no idea. Sometimes it's so surreal these days. You don't know if even what you're seeing is the truth or real, or if it's somehow made up. I mean, it's gotten that bad in the times that we're living in right now. So I think at this point we need to do everything that we can do to prevent this woman from being in the White House, and that is every legal thing we can do, which is going out there and vote, which I say too on Election Day. We need to, as citizens, be watching vigilantly everything that takes place inside of that voting booth. What are people doing? What are people saying? Does it look like there's any type of corruption going on? And that needs to be reported. And pictures need to be taken. Whatever you can legally do. If you see something, see something, say something. Just don't say anything to the FBI, because they're not going to care. And don't say anything to the DOJ, because guess what? They're not going to care. But you can put things out there on social media. You can alert the press in your town if you live in a conservative town. I mean, you can get the word out there of anything that you see that you think is going on that is corruption and fraudulent in this election. If you see people voting twice, if you see people doing things that are against the rules of voting in that particular district. For example, wearing shirts out there talking to people or whatever that tell them to vote for one candidate or not, or people being intimidated intentionally and not allowed in, or excuses being brought up, or, oh gosh, we're getting ready to close in 5 minutes, and I'm sorry, you line of 1,000 people, you're not going to get to vote today. Things of that nature. And you have to do them quickly. You have to get the word out quickly. Now, hopefully, I know that WikiLeaks are saying, well, we're going to have another October surprise and we're not even going to get there at this point. Well, that'd be wonderful. If you have information that can really and truly indict her, because so far you've said that you've got this information and people are going to care, and so far they don't care. They just don't care. If you've got something that is like the most damning information that you've ever had, and you can guarantee that this woman is indicted and never makes it to November 8th, for all means, come out now and do it. And don't continue to wait, because if you wait too long, it won't matter, because people will just say, well, let's just go ahead and vote and see what happens. Once this woman, if she gets in, she's not going to be impeached. She's not going to be impeached. It's just not going to happen. We've already had one Clinton that's impeached in office. I don't see another one being impeached. And it'll be like, it won't be as bad. It won't be like, well, you have the first African-American president. Of course you want to impeach him for violating the Constitution over and over again with his executive orders. So nobody's going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. We've seen that for 8 years. But with Hillary, it'd be, oh, well, you just don't want a woman in there. And so therefore, yada, yada, yada. You just want her impeached because she is a woman, or have the same argument. Now, again, it won't be as bad, and there's a possibility with her where there wasn't with Obama, but you can't count on that. You really can't count on it. So these politicians, you got to get them out before they get in. And so WikiLeaks, if you have something, let's bring it on out now. Because as we've seen, things are ramping up. Some of this stuff with Charlotte going on and all the riots, and they played those out as long as they could, and then they tried to do it in Atlanta, and they tried to get something going all around. You can't tell me that wasn't a distraction, so we don't know what's going on out there. That we don't know what's going on in the Middle East right now, that we don't see any of that we don't see Russia, who is ramping up to say, you know what, United States and Europe, I don't care what you say, I'm going to do this my way now. So you can just step aside, and I'm going to go ahead and do what I want to do. And that's what Russia's doing. And we're not talking about that in the news. All we're talking about is the people in Charlotte and the riots, and nobody doing anything about it. And now it's over, sort of, kind of. But then we have people coming out, oh, well, here's the list of demands that we want. We want you to get rid of the police stations across the country. We want that money used for education and social welfare programs and anything else that we can get. This is coming from the people who are rioting and looting. They're already getting most of what they're demanding, and it's not working, okay? So why do you think getting rid of the police department on top of those things that you're asking for is going to help? And everybody knows it's ludicrous. Everybody knows that if you get rid of the police department, it's going to be total out-and-out chaos. And I'm sure some of the looters from George Soros funding would want you to go along with them and say, oh, well, sure, let's just get rid of the police department. We don't need them. And if you guys want to just go ahead and shoot it out in the street and riot and loot every business around the world, or at least across the United States, we're not going to have any police that are going to do anything, so go right ahead. How crazy is that? And how crazy do people sit there and go, yeah, ooh, I'm all for that. I mean, if you have a brain cell in your head, then you know how ludicrous that is. And why did we even have that on the news? Why was that even brought up as a list of demands that wasn't laughed right out of the headlines. Oh my gosh. Moving on to a more serious matter. There was another shooting, this time in California, of an officer shooting and killing a black man, and this happened yesterday, and it happened in El Cajon, which is basically a suburb in San Diego County. It's in the northeast area of San Diego County, and the what's coming out so far, I mean, again, the facts that are coming out right now may change depending upon more information that's received. But apparently what happened, I believe this man's sister, and he's a 30-year-old black male, his sister called asking for help because her brother was acting erratically behind a restaurant. And again, I'm not sure who called, but somebody called and said this man is acting really erratically. He was not acting like himself, had been walking in traffic in a manner that endangered himself and other motorists, according to the police chief there. And we have another case of when the officers supposedly came up to him and asked him to comply with their directions. They're telling him to probably take his hands out of his pockets, put his hands in the air, whatever the case may be. I'm not sure. Again, I don't know all the facts, and they're not given. But he failed to comply, and apparently he walked around with his hands in his pockets, wouldn't take his hands out of his pockets. And anybody who knows anything, and again, I don't know, most of the people who are listening to the radio show right now, they appreciate police officers. They understand what type of job they have and how dangerous it is. And it's getting more and more dangerous as time goes by. Each and every day, it's getting a little bit more dangerous. If you have somebody who's walking around in front of you and they won't take their hands out of their pockets, the likelihood is they could have some sort of a weapon in their pockets. Now, you may say, or we may hear other people like Black Lives Matter say, well, he doesn't have to take his hands out of his pockets. You have no right to ask him to do that. Yeah, they do have a right to ask him to do that if they feel that he's a danger to himself, he's a danger to others. They don't know exactly what's happening. They just know they've received a call. This man is acting erratically. He's endangering himself and other motorists, that type of thing. Yeah, they have a right to say what's going on here. And until they figure that out, they can ask you to do a couple of things. And it's not really a violation of your constitutional rights to ask you to take your hands out of your pockets to make sure that everybody is safe, including the man that they're talking to. And once again, according to the facts that are in this article, at least, he failed to do what he was asked to do. I mean, how many more of these things are we going to see where people are told by the police, put your hands up, take your hands out of your pockets, do this, do that, whatever the case may be. People fail to do it, and tragedy occurs. Apparently, one of the officers was trying to ready, his taser to get this man, and while another police officer had guns drawn on him, I think that was the case. And as he was preparing the taser to fire the taser, the man jerks his hands out of his pockets, and you can see in a picture that somebody took. I don't know who took the photo, but the man, for whatever reason, a 30-year-old black male, he took the like a shooting stance. I mean, it's feet spread apart, shoulder width, hands up, put together at an angle where it looks like you're ready to shoot somebody. It's the same stance that you see the cop in the picture is taking, basically the same stance, and the one that has a gun held on the gentleman in El Cajon. And so when that occurred, when the male, and I don't know if I have a name of him or not, but when he put his hands up like that, basically the police officer fired his weapon. And I don't know what object, if anything, he had in his hands, meaning the black man that was shot and killed. But apparently, so far, there has been no gun found on the scene. Now, does that automatically mean that the police officers did something wrong? No. And once again, it's going to be one of those things where we look and see what the court system is going to say if this, in fact, goes to a court of law. Because when you're standing there as a police officer and your life is on the line, you've asked somebody to comply with your directive so everybody can be safe. A person who's been acting erratically, has been jumping out in the middle of the street, doing whatever the caller said that supposedly he was doing. When you ask them to comply with directives and they don't, and then automatically and very quickly hands are taken out of the pockets, you have a split second to make a decision whether or not to fire your weapon. And the object, maybe there was an object, maybe there wasn't, I don't know. And it's going to be, did the police officer, act reasonably in doing what he did and thinking that his life was at risk? And it's going to be what a court of law finds if it goes to court, like I said. Finds that he acted with criminal intent. If he did, then he goes to jail, spends time in jail. If he didn't, if he reasonably thought somebody was trying to kill him and he had to protect himself, that's gonna be a toss-up question. I mean, it really is going to be, and all of it really could have been prevented if the man had complied with the officer's request in the first place. If that, in fact, is what happened. It's just so sad. I mean, it really is. It didn't have to happen. And quite honestly, I'm surprised that another officer tried to get his taser ready. I mean, to me, that shows, I don't know if that's good sense or bad sense. I mean, if somebody's standing there and you're not sure what's going to happen and your life is in danger, do you really have time to get a taser ready? And I've said this before, the bullets are stronger than tasers. Meaning, if somebody who you as a police officer have come up to and said, get your hands out of your pockets, let me see what you have in your hands and all that, and they don't comply, and they take their hand out of their pocket and they have a gun, your little taser isn't going to keep you from being killed. And it may or may not stop that person quickly, assuming they don't get a round fired off before you get your taser together and fire it at the man. Now, it's totally tragic, absolutely tragic and horrific that this had to happen. Again, all it took was just to comply. Now, maybe the man was mentally ill. And people might say, well, you killed a mentally ill man. As if a mentally ill man can't pull a trigger or stab you with a knife or whatever. I'm not saying that he had any one of those things. And the police officers obviously didn't know either. And that may or may not make a person more dangerous. You just don't know. I know years ago in San Diego, there are a lot of people who sometimes want to be killed by the police. It's suicide by cop is what they call it. And you don't know if that's a situation that you're dealing with. There was an instance in San Diego where a young black male, and I don't remember all of the circumstances, I remember seeing it on TV. There was a police officer who basically stood in front of him trying to get him to put his weapon down. He had the weapon down by the side of his leg. He was just standing there and he had the weapon down. You could see there was a weapon in this instance. And he had it held down next to his leg. And the police officer kept saying, put it down, put it down, put it down. And then all of a sudden, the man just picked up the gun with the intent, I suppose, of it wasn't to put it down because he could have just dropped it. But he pulled his hand up, and that's when the officers shot and killed him. And you had, on the news, it ran over and over watching what happened. And there was speculation again. Did the police officers act too quickly? Could they have done something else? I don't think they had tasers back then. I think it was in the 70s. Not sure what they had at that point. But you certainly, when you're standing there and you've got your gun drawn and they have a gun, or you think they have a gun, you don't have time to go through all the scenarios in your head. Okay, Now, let's see, what does this mean? You can't sit there and think it through. You absolutely have a split second to determine whether or not you or someone else, and even the person that you think has a gun, whether they're going to kill themselves or somebody else. And you have to act quickly. And people are human beings. Police officers are human beings. They're not going to 100% of the time get it right. And when they don't get it right, they'll have to pay the price for it. I don't know if the police officer in this case acted appropriately or not. I have no idea. I just know what the article says and the facts that were given. This is a CNN article. And I see the photo of what was happening at the time. Have no idea what happened before, so I don't know. A lot of times people get there, they turn on the filming or they take a picture when something has happened beforehand, and that's not recorded. So I have no idea. I do know that, El Cajon, there's going to be a protest. People were gathering yesterday, going to be a protest today. So far, it's been a lot more peaceful. San Diego doesn't put up with stuff like that. Now, this is El Cajon. It's not San Diego. So you're not going to have the San Diego Police Department taking the action. It's going to be an El Cajon Police Department, much smaller than San Diego. I mean, if you recall, with San Diego, when they had the Trump rally in San Diego, nothing happened. They put supporters and the BLM people, they were totally separated, and they were never allowed to be together at the same time. San Diego's like, we're not going to put up with this crap. We're just not going to have it. And so they are really good about stopping stuff right away. El Cajon, I don't know. Will the people of El Cajon start rioting and looting? I don't know. I kind of doubt it, because I don't know that BLM has shipped anybody in, So unless they put people on buses and ship them into El Cajon, it's probably going to be peaceful. And I guess we'll find out as the time goes on. But, I see all these articles coming out now. Oh, my gosh, to be a police officer, it takes more time to learn to be a hairstylist. So now they're complaining that the training is not long enough. Well, I don't know, compared to what? It's funny, the training was fine, or seemingly fine, for a number of years leading up until right now, up until BLM said that there was a problem and that we needed to do something about it, that cops were killing all black people. Which, again, the statistics do not ferret that out and do not support that. But, in these days and times that we're living in, since when do the facts really matter anymore? Do they? I don't think so. Because we've changed the facts all along. I mean, look at Charlotte now, what's coming out. I saw something yesterday. I believe it was the gentleman who got shot and killed. His wife had taken out a temporary restraining order on him prior for having a gun and waving a gun, allegedly. And then, but, when it came time, when the incident happened recently, his wife was the first one to say he doesn't have a gun and, don't shoot him. And the police say there was a gun, So again, who knows what's going on? These things need to be looked at by people in court and to make a proper decision rather than being tried in the public arena. And so we don't want to jump on things so quickly. We don't want to jump on things like an El Cajon. We do not know. We were not in either the shoes of the police officer or the shoes of the man who got shot and killed. We just weren't. We weren't there. We don't know what happened. And it's going to take some time to look at everything. And I would just hope that people would stay calm and let the system do its job. Again, it's tragic, absolute tragic, that a person had to lose their lives. Really is. And if the police officer was wrong in shooting the man, then he ought to go to jail, whatever the case is. But we won't know that until all the evidence has been looked at. It's too easy to come out immediately and say, it's your fault. Do the cops need more training? I don't know. I went through 3 months in a police academy 5 days a week. And every single day was either, classroom training. Mostly it was hands-on, physical training to learn how to fight off somebody, to learn how to protect yourself. We had firearms classes to learn how to properly shoot. We were constantly training, physically, jumping over walls, going through different types of scenarios and how to do all these different types of things. I mean, basically how to do a hot stop, a hot felony stop, how to keep everybody safe, how to get a person out of a vehicle and down on the ground, things of that nature where you can do it over and over and over. And we did do it over and over and over, but how many times do you need to repeat it until, it becomes automatic? And trust me, we did it so many times, it did start to become automatic. And whoever is really prepared to ever have to pull a weapon and shoot somebody. I don't care how much training that you have. It's not going to be easy for anyone to ever make that type of decision. And for people to claim that, these cops are just killing people, it's ridiculous. It absolutely is. They know before they do this, it's going to change not only their lives, their families' lives, but the person that they're shooting, whether they have to or not, whether they make the right decision or wrong decision. It's going to be something that is for the rest of their lives will stay with them. So it's not an easy decision. And do they need more training? Again, the question that seems to be on everyone's mind. Are you going to pay for it? Are you going to pay for that training? Are you going to offer them more money for the training that they do get? I mean, when I was going through the academy, becoming a police officer, I think you were paid less than a teacher, and it still may be the same way. Maybe you're paid less than the hairstylist that they're comparing their training to. Are you going to pay them more? I'll tell you what, there's no way right now, no way that I would be a police officer in the United States. Absolutely no way. Because you will lose every time, no matter what. No matter if you made the right decision, if everything you did was legal, you're going to lose. Because you're going to be seen automatically before anything is ever looked at, you're the bad guy. Nobody else, there's no criminal ever alive that could have done anything wrong, right? In the eyes of the public, when you're a police officer and you have to make a decision. It's ridiculous, but that's the way people are looked at. That's how cops are looked at these days. And again, we had training as well as to, films that we had to look at. And you're the cop, and somebody's coming at you, and they're doing X, Y, and Z, and you have to make that split decision. So we've had training to know how to handle a type of situation like that. And even in simulation, you're just sitting, you're so anxious. It's real to you when you're doing that simulated training. And so if you're that anxious during the simulated training and you feel like your life is in jeopardy, then what do you think it's like when it's real life? When somebody is standing there pointing at you, whether it's a gun or some other object or you think there is, how bad do you think that is? It's, again, everybody likes to play Monday morning quarterback. Oh, well, the cop should have done this and the cop should have done that. And he should have, bent down, tied his shoes, picked out his taser, got that together, and then, shot that off instead of a gun. You don't have time to think like that. You really don't. And again, I've said this before. I encourage anybody who thinks that all cops are bad, that all cops are stupid, or they don't know what they're doing, go on a ride along and see how comfortable you are. I guarantee you, in 5 minutes, you will not be comfortable with what you see and what a police officer has to come face to face with every time he or she gets out of the car, every time he or she does a traffic stop, which is one of the most dangerous times, and in domestic violence, the most dangerous time probably. So let's stop playing Monday morning quarterback. Let's give people the benefit of the doubt. Let's look at all the evidence before we start condemning people, especially the police officers who are mostly out there to protect and serve us. They really are. It's a hard job. Again, I would not want to do it in today's society because no matter what, you're the one that society is going to scrutinize, not the alleged criminal. That's not a good place to be. Thank you again for joining me today. I'm so glad that you could be here. We'll have another show for you next week, and please make sure that you download the Spreaker app for Stand for Truth Radio. Just type in Susan Knowles under the Spreaker.com or the Spreaker app. Till next time, God bless you.